The little white envelope slipped from her trembling hands and landed on the polished marble floor just as the church bells began to ring in the distance. Inside was a single heartbreaking note that shattered every dream she had spent years building. The groom had disappeared without a goodbye, leaving behind only cruel words that said she was never good enough, never worthy of love, and never the woman he truly wanted. As tears blurred her vision, she quietly folded the note, forced herself to stand, and walked away before anyone could witness the moment her heart broke into pieces. What she didn't know was that a stranger standing nearby had heard every painful word. That stranger was one of the city's most respected millionaires, and within hours, he would make a decision that would completely change both of their lives forever. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness too. Your support helps us bring more heartwarming stories that remind the world compassion can still change lives. Morning sunlight spread across the city, painting the streets with warm golden light as people hurried toward work, children laughed on their way to school, and cafes filled with the comforting aroma of fresh coffee. Life seemed wonderfully ordinary for everyone except 28-year-old Maren Holloway. Just hours earlier, she had imagined this would become the happiest day of her life. Instead, she quietly packed her wedding dress into a small suitcase and carried it back to the tiny apartment she rented above an aging bakery. Every step felt heavier than the last, but she refused to let bitterness steal the kindness that had always defined her. For nearly 7 years, Maren had worked as a nanny for the Ashcroft family. Their energetic 5-year-old daughter, Sophie, adored her more than anyone outside her own parents. Maren was patient, creative, and endlessly gentle. She turned rainy afternoons into magical treasure hunts, transformed bedtime into adventures filled with imaginary kingdoms, and celebrated every small success as though it were the greatest achievement in the world. Despite earning very little, she never complained. She believed love was measured by what people gave from the heart rather than what rested in a bank account. Unknown to Maren, Theodore Ashcroft often noticed these quiet acts of kindness. A self-made millionaire who built one of the country's largest construction companies, Theodore rarely had time to slow down. Endless meetings and business negotiations had filled his calendar for decades. Yet every evening, he saw his daughter laughing again after difficult days because Maren had somehow turned ordinary moments into unforgettable memories. He admired her dedication, though they rarely spoke beyond polite greetings. The morning after the cancelled wedding, Theodore stopped by the church to deliver a donation promised months earlier. As he approached the entrance, he unintentionally overheard Maren speaking softly with the elderly caretaker while trying to return and use decorations she had purchased herself. She apologized repeatedly for wasting everyone's time and quietly admitted her fiancé had left because he found someone wealthier. She insisted no one should blame him because perhaps she truly wasn't enough. Those words pierced Theodore more deeply than any business failure ever had. The millionaire returned to his office unable to focus. Reports waited on his desk, investors expected calls, and important contracts required signatures, but one thought refused to leave his mind. How could someone who devoted her life to caring for others believe she deserved so little? He remembered the countless mornings Maren arrived before sunrise, the evenings she stayed late whenever Sophie became ill, and the holidays she sacrificed so his daughter would never feel lonely. She had given so much while asking for almost nothing. Later that afternoon, Theodore visited his home earlier than usual. Sophie rushed into his arms with excitement before asking where Miss Maren had gone. When Theodore explained she needed a few days to herself, the little girl's smile faded. She quietly handed her father a drawing showing herself holding Maren's hand beneath a bright rainbow. In uneven handwriting, the child had written, "The nicest person in my world." Theodore stared at the picture for several minutes, realizing children often recognized goodness long before adults did. The following morning, Theodore made an unusual request. Instead of asking Maren to return immediately to work, he arranged for a month's paid leave. Along with her salary came an envelope containing enough money to cover every wedding expense she had personally paid. There was no mention of charity or pity. The note simply thanked her for years of unwavering kindness and reminded her that one painful chapter should never define an extraordinary life. Maren cried harder reading those words than she had when her wedding collapsed. Not because of the money, but because someone had finally seen her pain without judging her. For the first time in weeks, hope quietly returned. Rather than spending her leave hiding indoors, Maren volunteered at a community center that served struggling families. She organized reading circles for children, prepared meals for elderly neighbors, and even repaired a neglected playground using donated materials. People naturally gravitated toward her warmth. Even while carrying her own heartbreak, she somehow found strength to comfort others. News of the community center's transformation unexpectedly reached Theodore through one of his charitable foundations. Curious, he visited without announcing himself. What he witnessed left him speechless. Children surrounded Maren with joyful laughter. Elderly volunteers smiled brighter than they had in years. The worn building suddenly felt alive because one compassionate woman refused to let sadness harden her heart. Theodore realized something remarkable. Wealth had allowed him to build towering office buildings, but Maren built something far more valuable wherever she went. She built hope. Inspired by her example, Theodore proposed funding a complete renovation of the community center. However, he insisted on one condition. Maren would oversee every decision because she understood people's needs better than any executive ever could. At first she refused, believing someone with no business experience wasn't qualified. Theodore gently reminded her that compassion often accomplished what experience alone never could. Weeks turned into months as construction transformed the aging center into a beautiful gathering place filled with classrooms, libraries, gardens, and playgrounds. Maren worked tirelessly alongside architects, volunteers, and local families. She listened carefully to every suggestion, ensuring the building belonged to everyone rather than simply carrying a wealthy donor's name. As they worked together each day, Theodore began seeing Maren beyond her role as Sophie's nanny. He discovered her quiet resilience, her remarkable wisdom, and her ability to inspire strangers through simple acts of kindness. Maren also witnessed a different side of Theodore. Beneath the expensive suits and business success lived a widowed father who still blamed himself for working too much before losing his wife to illness years earlier. Success had earned him admiration but never healed his loneliness. Their friendship grew naturally through shared purpose rather than grand gestures. Some evenings they remained at the community center long after sunset, discussing dreams for children who deserved brighter futures. Other times they simply watched Sophie play with friends beneath the new trees planted around the garden. Neither rushed to define what they felt. Both understood genuine trust required patience. One crisp autumn morning, the community center officially opened. Hundreds of families attended the celebration. Children raced through colorful playgrounds while grandparents enjoyed peaceful garden paths. Local musicians filled the air with cheerful melodies. When city officials praised Theodore for his generosity, he quietly redirected every compliment toward Maren, explaining none of it would have existed without her compassion guiding the project. The crowd responded with a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Maren stood frozen, overwhelmed by tears she could no longer hide. For years she had believed she wasn't enough. Yet here stood hundreds of lives forever changed because she chose kindness over bitterness. That evening, Theodore walked through the empty center after everyone had gone home. Sunlight faded into soft shades of orange as silence settled across the building. Looking around, he realized something extraordinary had happened. The place was no longer simply bricks and walls. It had become living proof that broken hearts could still build beautiful futures. Months later, Maren received an unexpected invitation to speak at a charity gala honoring local heroes. Nervous but determined, she shared her story of heartbreak without mentioning the man who abandoned her. Instead, she spoke about forgiveness, resilience, and how one unexpected act of kindness restored her faith in humanity. Many guests wiped away tears before rising together in heartfelt applause. Among them stood Theodore and Sophie, both smiling with quiet pride. After the event ended, Theodore finally admitted something he had carried in his heart for many months. Watching Maren rebuild her own life while lifting countless others had changed him forever. She reminded him that true wealth wasn't measured by fortune, but by the lives touched with compassion. He asked not for immediate answers or promises, only for the opportunity to continue walking beside her through whatever life might bring. Maren smiled through grateful tears because, for the first time, love no longer felt like a fairy tale built on perfect moments. It felt like trust earned through kindness, respect, and unwavering support during life's darkest days. Together, they continued expanding community centers across neighboring towns, creating scholarships for children, supporting single parents, and offering hope to families facing impossible circumstances. Sophie's laughter echoed through every new building, reminding everyone why kindness always mattered. Years later, visitors entering the original center noticed a small wooden plaque near the entrance. It didn't mention fortunes, companies, or impressive titles. Instead, it carried a simple message. Sometimes the greatest miracle begins when one person chooses compassion instead of walking away. People paused to read those words before continuing inside, unaware that the message reflected the very lives of the two individuals who made the place possible. Before we reach the end of this unforgettable journey, we'd love to hear from you. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness too so more people can experience stories that remind us humanity is still alive. Rose special request, comment below with the words, "Kindness always finds its way back." We'd love to know how many hearts still believe that one act of compassion can change a life forever. As the sun set over the peaceful gardens outside the community center, children continued laughing beneath the trees, parents smiled with renewed hope, and elderly neighbors found comfort in knowing they were no longer forgotten. None of them realized that everything they enjoyed had started with a heartbreaking morning when a young nanny believed her future had ended forever. Yet life had quietly prepared something greater than the wedding she lost. It gave her a purpose larger than personal happiness, friendships deeper than convenience, and a love built not on promises spoken in front of a crowd but on daily acts of compassion. The millionaire who overheard her sorrow never rescued her because she was weak. He simply recognized the extraordinary strength already living within her and chose to believe in it when she no longer could. In the end, it wasn't wealth that changed two lives. It was kindness, quietly offered at exactly the moment someone needed it most. And perhaps that is the greatest reminder of all, that every compassionate choice creates ripples far beyond what our eyes can ever see.